Hey everybody, Jake here, and today we're going to take a look at the Booz Blades Aero Mini. This knife is currently not available directly from the manufacturer. You will have to pick it up secondhand, but it's a very intriguing knife, and I've gradually come to like it more and more as I've been using it. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll go over the specs, size comparison, like, neutral, dislike, and I'll give my final conclusion on what I think about this knife. Alright, go ahead and do some quick specs here. Handle length on this knife is going to be 3.75 inches. Blade length is going to be 3 inches. So fairly compact knife, giving an overall length of 6.75 inches. This knife is also very light. It comes in at 1.98 ounces. I don't have an exact measurement on the blade stock thickness here, but it's fairly thin. I'll show that in some size comparisons to give you guys a better idea. Also, the handle is titanium with a carbon fiber insert. If you watch the disassembly video that I posted, you'll see that the carbon fiber is not a sticker. There had been some controversy about that. It is all the way through. You can see on the other side when it's disassembled. And the blade's going to be S35VN. Alright, here it is next to the Benchmade Proper, as well as the Reich Hummingbird. So you can see it's very similar size to the Benchmade Proper. It is about the same thickness. It's a little thicker. It's not too terrible though. And it's noticeably larger than the Reich Hummingbird, which a lot of knives are. Here it is next to the Spyderco Centofonte 3 and the CRKT Folding Razel. It is smaller than the Centofonte 3, not by a lot, but it's a somewhat similar thickness too. The Centofonte 3 is a little thicker. The Razel is noticeably thicker, which it's a very large knife, and it's obviously a lot bigger as well. Here it is in an open size comparison next to, again, the Benchmade Proper and the Reich Hummingbird. The blade length is the same on the Proper. The handle's a little bit longer on this knife, giving it a slightly overall longer length. And the blade actually looks longer, but it's just because the sharpening choil comes up right there to the end of the handle scales. So you get a slightly overall longer length, but it's not very much larger than Benchmade Proper. So if you have one, around, it'll give you a pretty good size reference. And the Reich Hummingbird is obviously much smaller again. Here's an open size comparison with the Spyderco Centofonte 3 and the CRKT Folding Razel. The blade length is very similar to the Centofonte 3, but the Centofonte has a much longer handle. The handle size on the Centofonte is much more comparable to the Folding Razel. And you can see the Folding Razel blade isn't a ton longer than these, but it does give a slight bit more cutting edge on there. And here it is to compare blade stock and handle thickness. We'll go over blade stock first. You can see it's very similar to the Benchmade Proper, maybe slightly thicker, not very much though. Noticeably thinner than the Folding Razel, but it is actually a tad bit thicker than the Centofonte 3, which has a very thin blade. The Centofonte blade stock thickness is about the same as the Reich Hummingbird. Very good knife for slicing. We'll come back to that later though in a different review. Handle thickness is somewhere in between the it's a little thicker than the Proper, a little thinner than Centofonte, so it's right in between there. It is, a little thinner than the or a little thicker than the Reich Hummingbird, and noticeably thinner than the Folding Razel here. So it's a pretty good small knife, very compact. And here it is next to a banana for scale. Alright, first up, what I like about the knife. So first thing's going to be the action. Out of the box, it wasn't fantastic. We'll come back to that later. But at the moment, this knife is running very well, and the action's very reliable. I haven't really had a misfire with this knife, partially because of the really strong detent, but it's pretty good. It's okay for, spider flicking, if I can do it on camera, of course. There we go. Still trying to get used to that on this knife. The cutout's a little small for my fingers to be able to get in there, and the detent's a little strong, but most of the time I can get it. But the action on this is very nice. Yeah, the opening's great, and it does fall shut pretty smoothly. It does not drop shut though. It's not like my ZTO 450 CF, which in my opinion has the best action of any knife I've ever used. It's not that good, but it's pretty good. It's very, very nice action. Next thing is going to be the opening options. So as I just showed you, you can use the flipper tab. You can, of course, do a middle finger flick. You got to be kidding me, man. There we go. This video is going to be 15 minutes long because I'm trying to sit here and middle finger flick this knife. You can do that. If you want to open it slowly, but with one hand, not to freak anybody out, but you only have one hand available, you can pinch right here, push up, and then open it with your thumb. And of course, you can do two-handed opening. There's a multitude of ways to get this knife open. The detent's a little too strong to push down with your thumb and kind of get it, but there's still several options for opening. And I like that they gave you that variety instead of just having to flip it out, because that might scare some people, especially if you're in a kind of calm office environment or a public place. At home, no one's going to care, but if you're out in public, you might not want to be, flipping this knife open super quick. You might want to take a slightly slower approach to it. Next thing's going to be the design. William Booz has some fantastic designs. They're all kind of this futuristic, aerodynamic kind of look. His other knife, the Smoke, doesn't quite look as streamlined, but it's still very futuristic, kind of very eye-catching design. It's very interesting. The first versions of the Aero didn't have this carbon fiber inlay, and he has mentioned that he may do other materials for inlays, but I like it a lot. It adds something to the knife that kind of looked barren otherwise. They also do this stonewash finish, which I'm fine with. I did notice, though, mine had a particularly bad little scrape right here, which you can kind of see. That's out of the box. But it's nice. It makes you not worry about, using the knife. And the blade has that same kind of stonewash finish. But the design's just very, very nice. There's a lot of small things, just details that he paid attention to. For example, on the first run of the Aeros, there were some issues with the blade because it's a very, very good blade to handle ratio with the blade tip poking you in the finger. So what he did is he took the back spacer and wrapped it up around it. So now you can't get in there. So it's a nice little touch. The cutout here flows right along with the body of the knife pretty much perfectly. It's rounded up here. It just looks nice. The crowning on the back of the blade is nice. The design's very, very good. Everything's rounded and contoured. There's no hot spots or anything like that. He paid a lot of attention to the detail in this knife, and I really, really appreciate that. Next thing is going to be the pivot. And this is kind of part of the design as well, but I wanted to mention it separately. So this is a very interesting pivot, and it almost looks tooled, but it's not, so don't freak out. It does have a Torx T8 on the other side, and the design allows it to not be free spinning, so it's stationary, and it's very easy to disassemble this knife. You can go check my disassembly video out if you're curious about that. But it's very, very nice, very pleasant to disassemble, very quick. It's super simplistic, and the pivot not being free spinning really, really helps with that. Next thing is going to be the sharpening choil. So this is if you have tiny fingers, it may be a finger choil for you, but it's definitely not for me. At least not safely, I don't think. But it is a very nice sharpening choil. It gets away from the scales enough to where you can tape them off for sharpening, and it's great. Very, very streamlined for sharpening, and the blade doesn't have too much of a belly to it, so this knife would be very, very simplistic to sharpen if you chose to do so. Keep in mind it is S35VN though, so it might take a little bit of time. Next thing is the lockup. This knife locks up about 40 to 50% every single time. It's fantastic. If you open it slow, you're going to get the same lockup as you do if you flip it open. It's really nice, very consistent. I have no worries at all about the lockup on this at all. It also has a stainless steel lock insert to prevent lock stick from it being a titanium frame lock. Next thing up for me, at least, is going to be the blade shape. This is the reason I bought this knife. My ZTO for 50CF, which is currently with ZT for some warranty repair work, has a very plain style knife blade, which is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, I love that knife. But as far as for piercing, into a box or packaging, clamshell stuff, It's not great. This is great for that. As far as piercing cuts, it goes in like butter. It's astounding. So the blade shape is probably one of my favorite things on this knife. Next up is going to be the grind. This is a completely full flat grind, and it cuts like a dream. This thing slices so well. The only problem I could see, which I haven't run into, is if you're cutting organic material, food, or something like that, it could very well get stuck in this cutout. That may cause issues for you. I haven't had any, but I really don't do food prep with my knives, so your mileage may vary. But the grind is just perfect. It slices ridiculously well. I've had no issues cutting with this knife at all, and it's probably one of the best slicing knives that I have. Next thing's going to be the fit and finish. So everything's just done really well. There's a very slight seams, where the carbon fiber meets the titanium, which is understandable, where the pivot meets the, stuff like that. But overall fit and finish is great. Everything's chamfered. Everything's done pretty much perfectly. I'm really, really impressed with this knife, and it has a lot of little detail that I mentioned earlier it just blows me away. The amount of work that went into this must have been ridiculous, but it really shows, and I'm very, very impressed with this knife in that aspect. Next thing, and probably my favorite thing about this knife, no, it is my favorite thing, hands down, is the pocket clip. That sounds stupid, but this pocket clip is fantastic. It is amazing. It has a ton of spring to it. It's very easy to lift up. It has really good ramp, and those cutouts help with that a little bit as well. But it's great. It's a fantastic, fantastic pocket clip. I love this thing. It carries, fairly deeply, and you don't really have to worry about, getting in and out of your pocket because it doesn't tear up anything. So I'll show you here. Just a little leather pouch with a dog hair on it. You can see it goes pretty well right down on that, and that's about how much sticks up. So if you're carrying this, that's what people are going to see. And if you're wearing blue jeans, this blends in very well, at least in this color. The bronze or silver, I don't know, probably not as well. But for me, this pocket clip really, really does it for me. The design is also fantastic on it. It's rounded and chamfered. Internal screw on this thing, so it blends in very, very well. They just did, well, he did a fantastic job on this. And We Knives, who manufactures this knife, did great on it as well. Next thing's going to be the back spacer. I really like the design of this. It's just intriguing, and I think it fits with the knife very well, especially with the cutouts for, the pocket clip and the blade. It's nice. I like it quite a bit. And again, it wraps up to protect your finger and eliminates the problem from the previous versions of the Aero. Next thing's going to be the packaging. So when you get this knife, it comes in a little clamshell zip case. It's just clipped right in here, and it's kind of faux fur lined. It's nice. You also get a little booze blade sticker and a little card for your knife, telling you the material, when it was manufactured, all that good stuff. But it's just nice. I have a lot of knives that I've purchased that come in cardboard boxes, including my ZT, which costs $20 less than this. It's just nice to see something like that. It kind of shows that they care, and I like the little attention to detail. And unboxings, when it's something you're excited about, the packaging does make a difference. Even if it adds a little bit to the cost, I'll pay an extra $5 or whatever for that. Next thing and the last thing, the size. So I mentioned I bought this for the blade shape, which is very, very true, but I also purchased it for the size. So I don't have my ZT over 50 with me, but it's slightly smaller. It's very, very akin to size, as you saw, to the Benchmade proper, which is fantastic for me. A lot of my time is spent sitting at a desk, so I don't need anything massive. I don't need to carry a folding razor with me when I have, the Aero Mini. And someone had actually commented on the the unboxing video for this, and they're like, "You're gonna return it. It's terrible. The size is so bad." I don't know if that's what he sounds like. That's what he sounds like, over the internet, I'm sure. But the size is fantastic for me. I don't really need to get a full grip on this knife because there's no point. Most of my time cutting with this knife, honestly, is spent in this position here. And the reason is that because it has very minimal belly, you can really get down and do some very precise cuts with this. It's a great size. I like it quite a bit. Alright, onto the neutral. First thing is going to be the cost. So for this knife, there's only one steel type. He does do some runs in different steels for knives, so there may be an upcoming change. But for this knife here, in this configuration, it's $200. That is not outlandish. That's why it's not in the dislike section. But I can see the competition getting kind of fierce in this area. For $200, you can get a really good knife nowadays. So I don't think it's ridiculous, or I wouldn't have paid for it, because I don't really have money to blow on things that are, super extravagant. So when I do get something this expensive, I like it to be very well made. And this is. But the materials, I feel like you can get them cheaper elsewhere. Especially if you go through like Kaiser or something like that, you can get one heck of a knife for $200. So again, it's using titanium and S35 VN. No real complaints here. The materials are good. But I feel like the value may be getting stretched a bit thin. I would buy it again, if I had the opportunity, if I lost or something like that. It's because I like the knife quite a bit. But if you're looking for the best value you can possibly get, this is probably not going to be it. You can probably get something larger with the same or similar materials for a decent bit cheaper. Again, the ZT-0450, similar size, exact same blade material, same handle materials. One scale is titanium, one scale is carbon fiber, and slightly larger uses more of those materials, and it's still cheaper. Part of what you're paying for is, the kind of designed in America thing, which ZTs are made in America, but it's also manufactured by We Knives, who does fantastic work, in my experience with them. So you're paying a little bit for that. But it's not a bad value at all. But you can go elsewhere and get more for your money if that's something that you're looking for. Next thing I'm kind of neutral towards is going to be the jimping. I feel like this jimping is... It's not unnecessary, but I wish they had toned it back maybe to like here, just to give you a little bit. I don't think you need all of this because this isn't a hard use knife. A full size Aero, sure, but I don't know. At least for me, I can definitely see the demerit for most of the people for this, but I kind of wish they'd done some fine jimping up here to give you a slightly better grip for precise cutting. Or, even two-handed push coating if necessary, which I don't see you doing that with this knife. It's whatever. But yeah, the jimping I'm just kind of a little meh about. Next thing and last thing I'm neutral towards is going to be the branding. So you probably haven't noticed any writing on this knife because there is none. The only thing on this knife to denote anything is the Booz Blades maker's mark. It is the sheepdog. Or not the sheepdog, the border collie, I think. Feel free to correct me. I don't know a ton about dogs. But that's it. There's no marker for, Booz Blades, designed in America, which I could do without, both of those, to be honest. One thing I would like to see, though, is the steel type. There's no marker for the steel type. If they had done it, even if they'd done it just right there or something, just S35VN, or if they had done it somewhere right in here, maybe just there behind the maker's mark, anything. Just to denote the steel type for future reference. That would have been nice, especially if they're going to be doing variations of these. There's a variation of his smoke coming out, I believe, that's going to be in M390. So if there's no steel type, you won't know what you're buying. That's a little infuriating, but it's something small. Really a nitpick. Alright, on to the dislike. Very short list here, unsurprisingly, in case you couldn't tell that I like this knife already. Very first thing, and the biggest thing to me, the action out of the box. Not right now. Right now it's fine. The action out of the box almost made me sell this knife or trade it because it was garbage. It was so freaking tough to flip this knife. It took me about a week and a half to break it in to get it to a point where I felt comfortable using it. because if I had done this, what I'm doing right now, when I first got the knife, my finger would be raw. It hurt to flip. And a middle finger flick, there was no freaking way. I still can't, do it great, but it would just scrape material off my fingernail, or more than likely because I keep my fingernails pretty short, but skin off of my finger trying to get this thing to flip. And it was ridiculous. But now the action, significantly better after the break-in period, but I probably flipped this knife, oh gosh, 200 or 300 times, maybe more, before it got to an acceptable point. Just sitting there playing with it as I'm like laying in bed, watching TV, or getting ready, or any time I had to break this knife in, I would take and use it, because it was unpleasant to use. I didn't enjoy using this knife or carrying this knife or anything for the first while that I had it. It was just, the action was way too tough. So it spent like I said, about a week and a half getting it to an acceptable point to where I didn't hate carrying this knife. And the last thing on the dislike list also somewhat is affected by that, and that's just there's no chamfering on the cutout. There's chamfering everywhere else in this entire freaking knife, but on this cutout, there's none. Might not seem like a big deal, but if you go to open it two-handed, you'll feel it, or one-handed, you'll feel it, or if you go to finger flick it, again, you're going to feel it, especially when, I can do this normally, guys, off camera, I promise, especially when you go to middle finger flick it. Like I said, at first, it was just tearing material off. It was, damaging my finger tips, my fingernail, just trying to get it to middle finger flick. And I was seeing all these posts on Instagram of these guys just doing it effortlessly, and I was like, what the hell is going on? So I went looking on Reddit, and I was not the only one with this issue. I would have still mentioned it in my review because it's my personal experience with the knife, but that really turned me off this thing. Coming from the knife that this was meant to kind of complement, I guess, the ZTO 450, which has astounding action. The thing's so freaking smooth. It was kind of shitty at first. It's gotten much better again now, but just out of the box, I was not impressed at all. And I understand, they probably made the detent a little stronger just so that when it did eventually break in, it wouldn't be too, flimsy. But that's a little bit ridiculous. And to be honest, I'm hoping that it breaks in a little bit more. If I can get this knife even smoother, I would be much, much more happy with it. But I still like it overall. It's a very, very good knife. But that action, the chamfering, really killed it at first for me. Alright, on to some conclusions. So, I love this knife. I don't plan on getting rid of it. Not saying it'll never happen, but at the moment I have no plans to get rid of this knife. The design is wonderful. The action's decent. It's pretty good, actually. The attention to detail is magnificent on this knife. It's very interesting and appealing to me aesthetically. The design's wonderful. There are a few knocks against it, but nothing really major. If you bought one of these and you're regretting it, you can get about retail, about what you paid for it, minus the, I think, $8 or $9 shipping, whatever it was. So you won't be out of your money if you decide to pick one of these up. But I feel like there's a few things that could have been fixed with it, but I love it. Like I said, I don't have any plans on getting rid of it. I plan on keeping it because I like small knives, and this is very intriguing to me. But it very well may not be for everybody. If you're looking for a hard use knife, knock this one off the table because it's not for that. It's running on, ceramic bearings. If you want a hard use knife, get one with, bronze washers or whatever. But if you're looking for something small, compact, with a very interesting design, a sort of slightly more appealing gentleman's folder, I suppose, pick one up. Like I said, there are a few of them that are available on Reddit at the moment for, between $180 and $200. So if you're interested, go ahead and grab one. They may be doing another run with different inlays, so you might want to wait on that. But if this design appeals to you, go ahead and pick it up. I don't think you'll regret it very much. Alright, thanks for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Keep an eye out for some upcoming videos, and also check out the disassembly of this guy if you're interested. It's very simple and is quite a pleasure to take down. Thanks, guys. Bye.